So good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Vital Conversations, Dialogues on Living and Dying Well. My name is Kim Adams, and I'm happy to be your host again this evening. And I want to extend a big welcome to all of you who have joined us from last month. I know I presented at the Massachusetts Hospice and Palliative Care Federation Conference last week, and I know a number of you have now signed up for this webinar tonight, so welcome. I wanted to just do a little housekeeping before we get started tonight. As most of you know, we are live here on the webinar. And so technology, we are hoping there's absolutely no issues tonight and things will run smoothly. But with live technology, sometimes there are issues with audio. Feel free to just, audio or video, refresh your browser. 9 times out of 10 will just clear that up for you. If, in fact, you continue to have some issues, I posted a link to the webinar, which is also being broadcast in YouTube. So feel free to check that out. It's on the right-hand side in the chat function. I put a sticky note. You'll be able to view that live. If you have questions or comments, you will need to come back and type those into the chat, but at least you could see a clear and clean view of the webinar. And also, everyone will be getting a recording and a replay of this, and so that will be crystal clear as well. So welcome for that. So as I mentioned, the chat, that's your way of communicating with my guest and I tonight. So feel free to go ahead right now and type in, let us know where you're listening in from, and certainly we encourage you to type in questions and comments and get some real engagement tonight. We have a really fantastic topic, and so I think that this will really generate a lot of dialogue and engagement. So feel free to do that as well. So what else do I want to let you know? Well, for those of you that don't know me, again, my name is Kim Adams, and I'm an end-of-life and advanced care planning coach. So I really support people in that last chapter of their life, regardless of health status, regardless of their age, to really begin to plan what it is that they want. We certainly plan many parts of our lives, weddings and births and birthdays and vacations. And so a lot of times we see this kind of last chapter of our life, kind of the end of our life, as kind of an abrupt, ending or change. And I'd invite us to look at that more as a glide, to be able to kind of move through that. And with some planning, it actually helps us to live more quality of life. So I do a lot of work around that with individuals. I'm also a hospice volunteer, and so this is a real passion of mine. So tonight we are going to talk about a vital, important piece and a vital role that many people play, many of you play, I'm sure, who are on this call tonight, regarding the final chapter for people. November is National Family Caregiver Month, and we have a caregiving expert with us tonight. And I am so pleased to have Michael Bloom on with me tonight. Michael's not only a caregiver coach and colleague, but he's a really dear friend. And I think that you will see tonight, Michael brings heart and soul to a very important topic. And we'll hear his story and we'll hear what he's now doing. But I think that by the end of this call, you will all agree, if you have not encountered Michael, that you will really see that he brings a tremendous amount of heart and soul and spirit to his work in supporting caregivers, both professionals and family caregivers. So so I'm thrilled to share him with you tonight. Michael and I have done many presentations together. And so it's really so, I'm just so thrilled tonight to be able to have him, to be able to share this important topic with you. So let me give Michael a proper introduction, and then we'll get started. And thank you. I see that lots of you are typing in from where you're listening from. That's fantastic, and we'll get to that in just a minute. So Michael is a certified professional coach and Caregiving Without Regret expert, and we're going to hear more about that, who has energized hundreds of caregivers with soul-saving coping strategies that support them in living lives, including their own. With a wealth of practical expertise as both a family and professional caregiver, Michael serves as a welcome and sought-after catalyst to guide caregivers to stay energized and committed to the work that has never been more important than it is today. Michael's the author of the book, The Accidental Caregiver Survival Guide, Your Roadmap to Caregiving Without Regret. And both he and I have a copy of that, which we'll share. So you can learn more about Michael, who's also a very sought after and speaker and keynote speaker. He just was up in New Hampshire doing a keynote speaker for family caregivers. And so he's well sought out. He's an expert in his field, and we can get more information from his website at caregivingwithoutregret.com. And I will put that address in the chat as well. But we are so fortunate tonight. And so, Michael, welcome to Dialogues.
Well, it's so great to be here with you, Kim, for Dialogues. And hello, everyone. I've already been interacting with some great people in the chat, so it's so nice to have so many people joining us. And I'll take a moment to share, Kim, you mentioned the book, The Accidental Caregiver Survival Guide. So here it is. The book actually was written, for those of you who want to know, I had spent several years as the primary live-in caregiver for my parents, my elder parents. My mother was got diagnosed with cancer, stage 4B lymphoma, after falling in a shopping mall in 2004. And that began a journey of care actually for my dad. My dad stepped into the role as primary caregiver for the next 5 years. Amazingly, my mom was a miraculous cancer survivor. She, her oncologist actually thought the chemotherapy would kill her before the cancer, but my mother made the decision to move forward. But one of the things that happened on the other side of treatment is that she became very frail and needed support with all activities of daily living. And my dad gladly stepped into the role to take that on. He was a dedicated spouse, and I was in a secondary role. But one day in 2009, I got a frantic call from my mother. She said that my dad was acting strangely. This was very early in the morning. My dad always prepared their breakfast and got their medication. And on this one particular morning, he seemed confused and refused to do so and actually stormed away, which prompted her call. I lived in the next town from them, so I immediately hopped in my car. It was very early on a Sunday morning and drove over and to see what was going on. When I encountered my father, he had taken himself to his home office and was sitting in his chair and was somewhat slumpy in the chair. I called 911. EMTs came out. We found out he had a heart rate of 25. Yeah. When he got taken to the hospital, they determined that he probably had a heart failure event that started while he was sleeping the night before. So they stabilized the heart failure event, put in a pacemaker. What we didn't realize until a couple of days later was that my dad had no short-term memory. He ended up, because he had enough oxygen deprivation to the brain during that stretch of time, he ended up with vascular dementia. So he would never regain his mind. So needless to say, he could no longer take care of himself. He would need 24/7 care from that day forward. So obviously he couldn't take care of my mom. And as an adult only child, I stepped in to take care of both of them. And that kind of prompts my title of my book. The reason I was showing it, The Accidental Caregiver Survival Guide, because most family caregivers enter the role based on some health crisis, some accident. You know, we currently have in the United States today about 40 million people taking care of a friend or a family member. Okay. And that could be an elder parent, a child with special needs, a sibling, a spouse that's been diagnosed with cancer or has Parkinson's disease, or you may even want to know, yesterday was Veterans Day, and want to say, just make recognition to, again, I'm so grateful for the service and sacrifice of veterans of their family. But since 9/11, we have had 1.1 million family caregivers step up to take care of our veterans who have returned with injury or have some sort of illness. So this cuts across all the spectrum of people in terms of families. Many of us are touched by caregiving and the need to provide support. So after going through this myself, and Kim knows well, because one of the things that you should know is after I took care of my parents and let them, supported them to age in place and eventually pass and transition with dignity in the comfort of their own home. I used in-home hospice for both of my parents when the time came. Kim, was an instrumental personal supporter as a grief and loss coach after the loss of my parents. So I know how important having a champion in your corner is while you're providing care or even after the journey of care to take care of yourself. So after going through this experience, between Kim and actually bereavement counselor that I had from hospice, because even I, as someone who's a coach, knows the value of seeking somebody to talk to about what you're going through, to share your experiences, because we all experience grief. It prompted me to write an essay called Caregiving Without Regret. That essay got published in the Gratitude Book Project of 2013, and that was the impetus from there to know that I needed to write a larger book so I could honor the legacy of caring for my parents by providing support to others so that they can take care of themselves along the journey of care, because there are two major regrets that caregivers tend to face. One is for things that they put aside personally and professionally. We tend to be all in for our loved ones when their need arises, that we will sacrifice our personal and professional aspirations during that journey of care. We'll never get those years back. And for some people who are providing care, that journey of care could be a decade or more. You never get that time back, which is why it's so important to carve out and develop a caregiving success plan so you can do things for yourself and provide high quality support for your loved one. And then the other aspect of regret tends to be that people, because we are walking hand in hand with our loved ones through some of the scariest challenges that we'll ever know, they truly are life and death situations, we have a fear and anxiety. And when we're in that state, we tend to lash out at those we're closest to. And that often tends to be caregivers and their loved ones doing the lashing out. And the idea behind this is that you're human. If these things happen, just seek forgiveness and move forward. Because again, we try to be superhuman when we're caregivers, recognize that you are human and could act in human ways and seek support and forgiveness when the time comes. So thanks again, Kim, for having me. And I look forward to exploring a whole bunch of topics and resources to help caregivers and those that support caregivers that are here with us tonight.
Thank you, Michael. Wow, that's huge. You know, the numbers that you quote are just phenomenal. And I had put this in my newsletter about, I think it was Rosalind Carter, one of the first ladies for Jimmy Carter, the President of the United States, that says that either people are former caregivers, they're currently a caregiver to someone, they will be a caregiver to someone, or they will need someone to be a caregiver. So I think that speaks to, you know, kind of the trend and where things are going. What's your thoughts kind of around the explosion around caregivers and the need for caregivers?
Absolutely. So it's a very interesting point. And I think, Kim, you know, too, although I tend to be very soul moved, I'm I'm kind of a numbers junkie as well as statistical junkie. So one of my things from one of my master's degrees, I have a master's in psychology and I was a statistics teaching assistant. So I have a real kind of thing for analyzing the stats that are out there. AARP released a study back in 2013, around the time my book came out, that showed, based on the population demographics here in the United States, for every person over the age of 80, there are currently 7 people available to care for them. So the ratio is 7 potential caregivers to 1 care recipient. Okay. Wow. 15 years from now, in 2030, that ratio is going to be 4 to 1. There'll be 4 potential people to care for every person over the age of 80. By the year 2050, that ratio will be 3 to 1. So you talk about the fact that I get to do talks. Sometimes I get invited into college classrooms and I get to address groups of students. And I like to put on the hat of like the dean of the school sometimes. And, you know, when the medical students or the law students will start, right, they say, look to your right and look to your left. And 1 out of the 3 of you probably won't make it to graduation. Well, I say, look to your right and look to your left, because at least 1 out of the 3 of you is going to be a caregiver. So you may as well get the scoop about how to do that now, because you never know when you may be asked to step into the role. And I'll have to say, too, speaking of AARP, and I talked about this, the new AARP magazine, for those of you who may be members, if you got this in the mail, that just came in. This is a very hot issue because it's all about caregiving in America, and it gives profiles of caregivers. And I want to share some other things to do too. Many of the caregivers that are out there, a majority are women, but actually the ratio has changed. It's now about 40% of family caregivers are men. Okay, so it's still a 60-40 split, but it used to be a 70-30 split, an 80-20 split, because traditionally caregivers have been, and many still are, the oldest female sibling in the family when there's a need that arises. Those numbers are changing. The other thing to know too is almost half of people serving as caregivers are under the age of 50. In fact, the majority of people that are stepping into the caregiving role are between the ages of 40 and 55. And a lot of them are caring for more than one person at a time, and known as the sandwich generation caregiver. So caregivers are really strong and resilient people, and they step up. So to say this, I'm not so concerned about the ratio changes, because many of us that have served as caregivers, like I took care of both of my parents at one time, we tend to care for more than one person. But no matter whether you're taking care of one person or more than one person, don't do it alone. Seek support. The idea is, and I talk about this in the book and other places, many caregivers, and I made this error when I first jumped into the role. I have a strong background in human services. I know the aging and the disability systems extremely well. I've managed large teams. So I thought, as somebody who was experienced as a manager, that I could do it all myself. And that was not a sustainable path. That's the path to burnout. That's the path to overwhelming exhaustion and stress. And as an only part of that was the only child in me too, so it was both a blessing and a curse. The curse was I didn't have siblings to turn to. And the blessing was I didn't have siblings to fight with over the decisions that need to be made. And the majority of the people that I have the honor and privilege to support in coaching do come from multi-person families that have other people that can step up. And it's usually one person that tends to step into a primary role who's not so satisfied necessarily with the support they get from others. We could talk a little bit about some tips about that in a few minutes. But I just want you to know how vast the services of caregivers. And the other thing too, to say here in the United States, and I'm not even talking, I know you have a global audience as well as I do. This isn't just a United States phenomenon. This is happening all over the world in terms of caregivers stepping up to the plate. There are, hundreds of millions of caregivers out there. But the key to sustainability and doing your job well is to know what you need support with and then make a plan to seek it and get it. So I'm happy to roll on with some other questions that you have.
Sure, great. No, that's a really great point, Michael. And I think, I'm just curious of the folks that we have that are listening tonight, are you currently a caregiver, or have you been? Let's just take a little bit of a poll. So just type in if you're currently a caregiver, because these are some tips and strategies that we're going to be talking about in a minute are going to be extremely valuable. And one of the things, Michael, so go ahead, folks, and type that in if you're currently a caregiver or have been a caregiver.
And maybe who they're caring for.
Exactly. Thank you. I was going to say who they're caring for. One of the pieces that you just alluded to, which I love, and you speak about it in the book, is caregiver isolation island. It's like the one island that you want to be voted off most quickest for. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, well, it kind of was taking it from Survivor. For those of you that may be Survivor fans, people want to stay on the island. They don't want to get voted off. And I'm like, when you're a caregiver, you really want to grab the torch and run because you want to seek support. But let's talk a bit about how to seek support. Many caregivers, and especially when you first get into the role, you're kind of learning the ropes. You don't have time. There's really no way to, there's not formal preparation or training that comes with this typically that people have. Your loved one has a crisis and just step in without pre-thought, you do it. And many times we go forward and we just keep doing and doing and doing. And I know for me initially, when I had other friends and family members asking what they could do for support, my typical response was, I'm fine, I've got it covered. And part of the reason for that answer was I thought it would take more work and more thought for me to figure out what somebody could do and then train them up on how to do it than to actually do it. But that was really not the way to go. It was much better when I developed a team. So one of the ways to do that is to think about, even just start small, make a list if you're currently serving as a caregiver of all the things that you're doing. Just on a piece of paper or on a computer document, a Word document or something, make a list of the things that you do, the tasks that you do to support your loved one and maintain your household. Because a lot of what goes into caregiving is also maintaining a home too. So if you list all those things and the things that you need to do on a daily basis, you can organize them into frequency, like a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and an as needed basis. You'll start to fill up this list. And then when somebody asks you, how can I help? You actually can share a list and let people self-select what they can do to support you. Okay, so you actually have a list of tasks. And I find this to be very effective where there's some disharmony in a family. A lot of times, especially when it comes to caring for a family member, an elder parent in particular, and there are multiple adult children involved, a lot of times the primary caregiver will request that a sibling do something, and then the sibling refuses or doesn't follow through. And that causes this friction, this anger, this upset. A lot of times there's a lot of baggage. There's a real problem with that. When you direct somebody with what to do or ask them to do one thing, you're giving them a task. Dwight Eisenhower said it best when he was general. The art of getting someone to do something is to give them something they want to do. So basically, that's the art of leadership, okay? They want to do it. So if you give people a list of items, because I can tell you, and those of you that are serving as a caregiver, there's so many things that you're doing. If you share your list, or at least share a part of the list with things and let the person choose what they can do, they're likely to select something, feel good about it, do it, and then they're likely to do something more in the future because they'll feel good about it. Because none of us have to step into a caregiving role. We make a choice. And that's another powerful thing too, with thinking about this. And I just want to bring up the power of choice. A lot of us that enter the caregiving role, when we are in it, we feel like we have no choice. We feel like our loved one has to have us, and we have to do this because it's our duty or our responsibility. That's fine. And I applaud you. I fell into that category too. I applaud you if you feel that way. But each day that you wake up and start engaging in activities that support your loved one, you're making a choice. And if you start embracing the choice that you're making, it's a much more positive, energetic experience than if you have to. The reason I bring this up too, none of us have to do anything. None of us, it's our judgment and our perception of what people need to do that causes this anger as well. So again, people don't have to do things. I know that can be tough for some people to hear, but if you come from a place of, I'm going to put out what I need and let people choose what they feel they can do based on their time, their talent, and their treasure, they're more likely to proceed with the activity, and you'll all feel better about it.
That, folks, is a huge golden nugget that Michael just shared. I think that's beautiful. Providing the menu of services, almost like going into a restaurant. Here's all the things that you can choose from, and allowing someone to do it. And Michael, I know we've spoken before too, but the power of being able to have children or teenagers to be a part of being able to choose from the menu of services, because they want to play a role as well in terms of, caregiving, maybe not obviously directly, but, helping out within the family. So I think that's another valuable piece.
Absolutely. I was going to say, it's best if we not leave people out of the caregiving situation. I want to say too, there's an amazing amount of children that are actually performing regular caregiving responsibilities. In fact, Kim, you mentioned I had the honor and privilege to serve as the keynote speaker at the beginning of the week at the 9th annual Caring for the Caregivers conference up in New Hampshire. And one of the topics that came out in the dialogue a little later in the day is people talking about children especially having children with special needs and siblings of children with special needs stepping into caregiving at a young age and becoming, getting into that role, in some cases, even sometimes burning out because they're really using that role. So I'm not suggesting we overuse children, but here's the flip side of that. Many people shield children from aspects of care because they don't want to make them uncomfortable. And I think it's a great way to teach responsibility. A young child coming over to play cards or checkers or watch a sports game with a grandparent who may have some dementia going on, can be really rewarding for both of them. And while they're interacting, it could allow you, the caregiver, to get other things done because they're occupied. And we don't often think about, involving kids in that way, that they are part of the caregiving team. The other thing I would say too, younger family members who are distance away, we have a ton of distance caregivers around here. I think somebody even mentioned they were they were in the chat. Been trying to eye the chat as I've been talking. I can't wait to dig in. We have some great conversation.
Yeah, we'll get to those. Those are great.
So we're going to get to those too. But even young adults who are part of the family are very technology savvy. Okay. And many caregivers are too. There's a great free resource that's out there for caregivers I always like to share with any group that I talk to. It's called, and I'll type it in the chat a bit, it's called lotsahelpinghands.com, LOTSA helpinghands.com. And what that offers is a free online portal for caregivers to use. In fact, I used this when I was caring for my mom after my dad passed away and was still caring for my mom. I used this service and it's free. I created a team. My mom's nickname was Bunny. So I created Bunny's Helpers. People could volunteer to be part of Bunny's Helpers. My friends, my family members, even members of my synagogue. Some of them joined up and became members of Bunny's Helpers. And what you could do with the family portal is you could actually, they have a calendar function. So if you have a need for support for appointments or even coverage while you are doing something, you could post a calendar need, and everybody who's part of that online portal gets an email notification that your request for support. And then people could just sign up. You don't have to make a whole bunch of phone calls. When my mom had some hospitalization and I was spending round the clock time with her for a period of time, I could go into my computer or iPad and type in a note, a journal note update, and everybody who was a member of my community would get it at the click of a button. I didn't have to make a bunch of phone calls. But here's where the younger family member could come in that may even be a distance away. That person could be an administrator or a coordinator of your online support system and let you, the primary caregiver with boots on the ground and right next to the loved one you're caring for, communicate what you need communicated and let them do it. Okay, get them involved because that's a great way to get help. So you're making one phone call, communicating information, and they're inputting it. So there's and then spreading the word. So all kinds of things. I think we have some great questions coming in here too. So Kim, anytime we want to move to some of those,
sure.
We're welcome to as well.
Great. Yeah, I was noticing, thank you, when we had asked about caregiving. Uma says she was a caregiver for her dad until she moved from India to the US. Maya is currently a caregiver in India. I'm wondering if they're your sisters, because I think that I saw that Uma said that you forwarded your link to your sister in India. So I'm wondering maybe you guys are sisters. Jacqueline was a long distance caregiver to her mother. She lived in Ireland and Jacqueline lived in Canada. So yes, and Brian is currently a caregiver for his mother along with siblings, two of whom are closer to his parents' home geographically. So yeah, it taps into siblings, no siblings, geographically connected, or a distance. Jane says that she was a former caregiver. Cynthia just finished caring for her brother who passed away just a little bit ago on October 23rd. She's also a sole midwife and 11th hour hospice volunteer. Well, certainly, Cynthia, we extend our sympathies and thoughts and prayers to you on the recent passing of your brother, and I'm sure that you provided wonderful support to him during his time. So Jacqueline, let's see, family dynamics were complex. So she was the one who made decisions for healthcare as no one else at home wanted to be in this role. Yeah, and I think I saw something else about having power of attorney in place and siblings arguing over decisions. Michael, I think, as you just described, being able to have people be able to choose various things so that people feel like they're not being imposed upon or being directed or being told what to do, as opposed to allowing people to make choices. Jacqueline asked an interesting question. Do you think not having siblings makes it easier or more difficult to be a caregiver? You may have tapped into that a little bit, Michael, but is there something more you want to add to that?
Sure. And I really think we are all dealt whatever hand we're dealt with. So we're
Right.
whatever, situation. So at times I think we all have our perspective. For me, I'm grateful because again, I didn't have anybody to have a dispute with. I mean, it was certain that I was the decision maker at that time. So it made it easier from that standpoint. My error earlier is I could easily isolate myself due to being an only child, because many of us who are only children, we don't need to be around others to get energy. We're used to being alone and kind of can value that alone time. It's easy to isolate. So my caregiving journey became more manageable and sustainable. And I think I was actually a better caregiver to my mother, because the journey of care with my mom was much longer than with both of my parents. My father passed early on. And so when I saw others for support and led the supports, it became much easier. But I think even families with siblings, again, can have an easier role. It comes down to the quality of communication and the quality of planning before you enter the role. So I noticed that Jacqueline mentioned having worked in long-term care, she witnessed many siblings arguing over decisions, even if there was a POA means power of attorney in place. So it's very interesting because I was talking to Kim before we went live. Next week, and I'll talk about this later, I have a caregiving power hour session, and I'm inviting a woman named Nicole Whipp, who is an elder law attorney, to be a guest on my forum, which is very similar to what we're doing tonight. It'll just be with me hosting about a week from now. But Nicole and I have had conversations about this, and when we think of planning for elder care, we think of the forms we must complete, the healthcare proxies, the powers of attorney. Okay, and they're very important. I'm a big advocate for getting those forms completed. In fact, I'm a big advocate for getting those forms completed for anybody in the family that's over the age of 18, so that we don't just make our elders feel defensive. Many people are resistant to filling out the forms because they feel like everybody's zeroing in on them because they're a certain age. The truth of the matter is, any of us could become incapacitated at any time. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. I have a friend who several months ago, her 30-year-old husband was riding a bike to work. He got into a bike accident. He was athletic, ran 7 miles a day, biked to work, and one day got hit by a car and had a traumatic brain injury. Okay, so it's always good to have those forms completed because we just never know. The elder may be closer to needing those things than we are on average, but it's good. The other thing I wanted to say that Nicole will talk about, and I'll give you a preview, the plan is important. And so the plan is much more than the form. So what would be best is if the person assigning proxy and a power of attorney makes their wishes known as well. So if they could state, in a document or with the help of an attorney what their wishes are. Now, the wishes in particular may not be legally binding to carry out depending on your state. However, even if it's not legally binding, if it was known and it's notarized by somebody, that person made those wishes. And I guarantee you, for the majority of caregivers that are out there, you would like a roadmap or a guide to follow that takes away the ambiguity from the desires of the person you're caring for. So that's the next step to all of that, is to really try to get clear as to what you want. And the other thing I say too, because death is a very taboo topic, death and dying Kim and I talk about this a lot.
All the time.
Especially here in the United States, we somehow don't want to talk about dying. Whereas in many European countries, there are death cafes and other things. We want to live a quality life, but I tell you what, we really want to, and I've witnessed many people in those final stages of life, both of my parents, we really want to have a quality final chapter as well. And the best way to ensure a quality final chapter is to make your wishes known, but also know that you can change those wishes at any time, because what you decide now may be different than what you want a couple years from now. Okay, so you can always update your documents. But I would say get it out there. And you know what? We have the holidays coming up. This is a great time to maybe not necessarily ruin your Thanksgiving dinner or your Christmas gathering with the discussion of death and dying, but at least have a topic to talk about it and make a plan to talk about it at a future date. Okay, so you get on and say that one of our resolutions going into 2016 is that we're going to get care planning done for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Michael, because that is the December webinar I'm going to be offering people, because people have asked me to be able to do this, since this is the work that I do. So I certainly cannot agree more with what you're saying, that anyone over the age of 18, but people, if they have an interest, and I'll be sharing more at the end, but we'll be beginning to open the door and have those conversations to begin planning to ultimately begin to complete forms, because you're right, tomorrow is not promised to any of us, and being able to express our wishes and make them known to individuals, that if we're not able to make those decisions, that someone else knows what it is that we want. So thank you for sharing about that. So I just want to check in also thank you for Uma, that you and Maya are sisters. That's great. And Uma says that siblings grieve differently, and this causes disconnect between them as judgments can creep in. Yeah. Speak to that a little bit, Michael.
Sure. Well, I think each and every one of us grieves differently, and this is actually Kim's area of expertise, and one of the things. But I know, we all experience grief in our way, and I think judgment creeps up in two ways with grief, right? It might be judgments that we have towards other people and siblings and other family members, but I think the biggest judgment that comes in is the judgment we have towards ourselves, with what we think we should be experiencing when. There is no A, B, C, D linear movement with grief. I mean, there's, it happens. And the best way to cope with grief is to not judge yourself or judge others, and just be open to experiencing it. And if you need to, if you're not getting the support you feel you need from your sibling, because don't forget, if you both have lost a loved one, you're both experiencing grief. And here's the other thing I will say too. And I know this as well. Grief doesn't just happen after a person dies. Grief happens during the caregiving journey, because when somebody that has been so vibrant in their life, and then some sort of illness or injury comes along that changes them. We use dementia as an example, because it could be such a long journey of care. In fact, there are, of the 40 million U.S. family caregivers that are out there right now, about 15 million of them are caring for a loved one with dementia. Okay. And that number is going to continue to grow, because unless there's a cure for Alzheimer's and dementia, which I hope there is in our lifetimes, because dementia is actually one of the things I fear more than anything else, because you're sort of out of control. Because you're going through that for so long, there are so many things that happen along the way that could leave you feeling grief. Your loved one feels grief over their loss of functioning, and you can feel grief over the changes that they have, personality changes. I actually wrote a post recently about the fact that dementia would be easier to deal with if you look different. Okay. One of the things that happened, my dad had vascular dementia. My parents were very close. So my aunt, my mom's sister, came to visit during one of the stretches that we were all together. And my dad was doing things. My dad was a retired chemist. Everything was by the book, routine oriented. He was one of the most organized human beings I've ever known in my life. But after he got vascular dementia, everything was different. He had no short-term memory. There was no organization to anything. His personality was different. He would lash out in anger. He would almost threaten to get physical at times. Totally uncharacteristic. My aunt said to my mother in a way that a sister could do, but a son couldn't do. And she said, Bunny, he may look like Irv. He may smell like Irv. He may sound like Irv, but he's not the Irv that we've known. And there was a grief associated with that. You know, this was not the man that she married 40 plus years earlier. This was not the father that I knew up until just a few months before that incident, you know, that was always the rock of the family. We experience grief along the way, and there's no right way or wrong way to do that. So anybody who needs to seek support from grief is to seek a supporter that will listen to you and not judge you. That's really a big thing. And anticipatory grief is still a big thing because we can anticipate what will happen at different stages of trajectory of the illness of disease, and also what life will be like after that person is gone. So that's very true, Jacqueline.
Yes, great points, Michael. You know, we're speaking about and kind of talking about the importance of, you know, the role of the caregiver. And let's switch gears a little bit and talk about, which really kind of just flows right into your book and kind of the roadmap and what really, you know, what is this about and why is it important for people to kind of recharge their energy? And let's just talk a little bit about the book, because I think there's such value in this. And I would certainly encourage any of you, you know, you can see it's a very quick read with some vital information. So it's not a heavy, thick, dense book. It's real practical. Michael provides really important information here that's you can put into practice quickly. So talk a little bit about the book, Michael, and the roadmap that you've created.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So it's great. Well, anybody who's interested in the book, and I didn't come on your series to sell books, but the book Accidental Caregiver Survival Guide is available on Amazon, and you can actually get links to it at my website, caregivingwithoutregret.com. Or you could go directly to Amazon. So the idea provides a bit of a roadmap, you know, to providing caregiving without regret. And I mentioned what the two major regrets were early in this session. That tends to happen with caregivers. And the idea is with the practical strategies is you don't want to do it alone. And it really starts at the beginning with ways to release crisis mode. Because I know when we're in the midst of the intensity of caregiving, it could really feel like a lot of things are happening that are beyond our control. And they tend to get us down. You know, it's what we can't control. We can't control the trajectory of our loved one's illness. And I know from talking to caregivers who are supporting a loved one with cancer, for instance, and caregiver and the survivor's guilt that could come up there too.
Yes.
If I had said this or I had offered that, then maybe they wouldn't have had this happen. Okay. It's easy to fall into that trap of thinking because we feel so responsible. And that's almost like being in a state of feeling like you're a victim. And you know what? It's okay. When you're having those moments of feeling really low and down, the idea is not to shrug them off or not to feel guilty about it, but to accept it and pass through it. I actually talked about at the talk something new that I didn't talk about in the book because I actually thought about this lately. Wouldn't it be great if we all could throw ourselves a pity party? And now, I had a caregiver at the conference who really liked this idea. We talked about this. So basically, there are times we feel really bad. So what if we could have a pity party that would take place, that we have a few close friends that could be a part of it. We just share all of our woes, get the woes out for a defined period of time. Just get it out there, put it out there, toss it out to the side, you know, let them go. There's nothing wrong with that. We think, oh, they're just, you know, we think about the people on Facebook that are always complaining. I'm not advocating being for that. The idea of the pity party is release it, get it out, because you know what? You have been dealt a crappy hand. So it's okay to acknowledge that. The problem is not going to the pity party. The problem is not leaving the pity party.
Right.
Okay. So you don't want to stay at the pity party because then you'll never get anything done and you'll never grow. So have a short-term pity party. And if you need them now and then, that's okay, but then move forward. The next step really is to avoid conflict, because when we feel all this stress and all this anxiety, it's natural that we have conflict, because again, it's very scary situations that we're dealing with. And when we're upset and fearful, we lash out at the people that we're closest to. And many of our personalities will change when we're in this role, right? So, and when our personalities change and the loved one's personality changes because of all this fear, it's easy to get into the conflict. So again, if you could realize that it's the situation and not necessarily the person, and again, just do what you can do, what you can control, you'll move much more in a forward way to getting to a place where people are more collaborating and working together. And the way to do that is in the area called achieving buy-in. You want to achieve buy-in. And that goes back to what I said about Dwight Eisenhower and all of that. Mm-hmm. The way to get people to be willing to support you is to give them choices in ways they can provide support. Don't just direct them. I mean, unless it's a paid professional that you're bringing in to do defined tasks, that's a different story. But if you're asking for people to volunteer their time, let them choose. And, we're coming up to a great time of the year here with the holidays. And a lot of people don't know what to get for holiday gifts. One of the great things that maybe people could do is make a caregiving support wish list and put that out there as to things they could get. Maybe it's, having meals cooked a couple days, a day a week or something, one day, or doing that, or a ticket to a voucher to a spa to get a spa day. Or it could even be if you're using or thinking about using some professional caregiving support to give you some respite, some support hours at a local home health support agency. So think about things, because if you can get the freedom to go and do other things, you're going to find yourself being more energetic, restoring your energy. And people love to get gifts that are practical and supportive. You would really be surprised if you were to make your wish list. Of course, if you really want to be gifted that iPad or put that on your wish list too. But the idea is, give people an idea of what they can do to support you and let them make choices. We often do that when it comes to weddings, right? The bride and groom will create a bridal registry, right? Mm-hmm. And people can go and see what they want to start their new life. We often don't have a caregiving party. We talk, when people become a caregiver, we don't throw a caregiving shower and say, congratulations, you and your loved one have entered the caregiving journey. Here, let's shower you with a whole bunch of gifts. Maybe we should start that, Kim.
That's a great idea, Michael. I love that.
So put that out there, be open with what you need. So those are really the kind of the early stages of the roadmap, because the idea is you want to navigate through conflict, and you want to put things out there so people can find meaningful ways to support you in ways they feel comfortable doing it. Because again, not everybody feels great. I'll tell a little story. I worked with a caregiver who lived far away. Her mom lived in New York City, was becoming elderly. My client was a distance caregiver. She was about 5 hours away from her elder mother. And her mother was having significant issues of need after a stroke. And so my client was taking a lot of time off from work and traveling to New York to be with mom and doing all kinds of appointments. Meanwhile, she had an adult sibling, her brother, who lived in New York City as well. But mom and brother had a falling out about a decade earlier, didn't talk. So the other thing I want to say here too, even family relationships can be restored. We actually processed and suggested that I'm good. I don't want to name the person directly, so I'm gonna call her Peggy, just for practical purposes. So Peggy, we processed, why not ask your mother and brother just to meet and get together for you? Just to come together and talk for you, because this health crisis has happened and you just want to get together, not to put any demands on anybody, just to get together. So she did. And surprisingly, they were willing to do it. And they actually had beer and pizza at mom's house one Saturday afternoon. And after that get together, mom didn't talk about her illness. She talked about the repair needs that were needed in her old house. Her son was actually a contractor. On Tuesday, he came back and started doing work in her house. And about 3 weeks later, he took her to a medical appointment. So and they actually were able to restore their relationship. So I guess the biggest thing I want to say with this right now, without going through the whole book, is don't think that things that maybe don't live in assumptions that because something has happened in the past and you view it's going to repeat itself, it may not or may not still hold true. Ask for what you need, put your needs front and center, and then see what could happen. You could open to a whole new world of possibility.
Beautiful. I love that story, Michael. I think it speaks to like so many things that you're asking for what you need, mending relationships. I mean, if they hadn't, just gotten together, then, the son probably would have felt like, oh gosh, I don't want to have to, or the sister could have, Peggy could have said, I need you to do blah, 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 and it could have created more tension. But just allowing and having the mom just talk about what it is that was important. And then he was able to tap into a skill set that he had, which was probably invaluable, working on the house. So I just love that. Yeah. As we're coming up, we have about 10 minutes left. I'm loving the engagement here in the chat. If people have any questions or comments, certainly, type those in. Let me just check in here. Jacqueline says, recharge your batteries. Yes, I think that's the piece here that we're talking about in various ways, is about you as the caregiver and recharging your own energy so that you can then be there to support, your loved one. Because what do we say? If we're empty, we can't give to anyone else. Michael, you have this beautiful analogy too, like of what they say when you get on an airplane, right? When you're listening to those preparations in terms of takeoff, if there's emergencies, what do they say? Put on your oxygen mask first and then to your small child or whatever. So a similar analogy, fill up yourself, make sure that you're taking care of you so that you can then be there for the person you're caregiving for. So recharge your batteries, that is it. So Jacqueline says, well, Maya says, I agree with Michael. When my mother was recommended radiation therapy for cancer, I reached out to her cousins to accompany her on trips to the hospital. I was going to be away for 3 weeks on work. I know my mom felt very loved seeing so many people pitching in. Yeah, just think about all the other people that, could play a role that maybe we wouldn't even have considered asking them, or that even thought that they may have been interested. And I think that speaks, Michael, to the assumptions you're talking about. Because in the past, no one has stepped up. It certainly doesn't mean that people won't in the future. So
it's really great. I just want to say I love that comment, Maya, that the cousin stepped up. And I had a very similar experience where I created Bunny's Helpers and used lots of helping hands. I really initially, I eventually got comfortable with going away overnight. And in fact, I took a couple nights away at a few times for retreat weekends to enhance my coaching skills through the coach training program that both Kim and I went through. We had graduated from the same school, although at different times. And what ended up happening, I had different female friends and family members that would stay with my mom through different parts of those weekends. And my mom had girls' weekends. She loved it. I got away and got to do my thing. And she had the benefit of new people that got to shower her with attention and hear her stories. And so it really opened up. I was so fearful in the beginning to release that, to be comfortable going away. Once I did it and realized how much better it was for her and for me, it was important to keep doing this. It's a great point you bring up, Maya. And Jacqueline, to answer your point about men being doers and really focused on the task, I'll tell you what the bigger, men can be more focused on the task. The bigger issue with men versus women as caregivers is men are very unlikely to seek support. In fact, in this AARP article, there's a story of a man who has been caring for his mother for over a decade, elder mother, okay, kind of like I did, and he has never sought any sort of support. He kind of feels he didn't need it, too proud of it, didn't know it existed, okay? So I think the reason men may come across that way is they are less likely to seek some form of support or talk about their issues. There are men that I don't want to put all men and all women into one gender category because we're all individuals. And there are certainly individual differences, but I think if we were to look at trends, that is a part of that. Jacqueline wants girls weekend too. works weekends. So I think it's great. But this conversation tonight, Kim, we have some great people here chatting with us.
Fantastic.
This is amazing stuff. This is just really wonderful. Where'd the hour go? We're almost at the top of the hour.
Exactly. That's what I want to know. Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we do kind of get to the top of the hour, I think it's important. Let's share some of the resources and things you have on your website, as well as some of the things you have coming up that people can tap into. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So if you come to my website at caregivingwithoutregret.com, you can actually request a little resource guide that's a PDF that gives my top 5 online free resources for caregivers to use. Lotsofhelpinghands.com is one of them, but you'll get my other 4. And I don't have time to go through them all here this evening with our remaining time left. So you can grab that. I also, this past summer, started a Caregiving Thrival Kit program, which is an online, on-demand 4-module program that walks people through how to embrace the choice they're making as a caregiver, form expectation agreements that they and their family members can have clarity in terms of the role, develop a caregiving success plan so you can have a document to outline all those activities, and then to seek the support you need, and also how to build in respite support for yourself, how to take care of yourself. I mean, one of the big chapters in my book and my mantra, as you know, Kim, is put chocolate in your pill box. And the reason I use that mantra, put chocolate in your pill box, is caregivers know pill boxes. We're forever dispensing medication. The pill box is a metaphor for your calendar. And the pills are a metaphor, the chocolate's a metaphor for what gives you joy. Although I'm a chocoholic, I can eat chocolate all the time. But when you put chocolate in your pill box, put at least something once a week in your calendar to look forward to, because when we're a caregiver, our calendar is just filled with all the have-to things, the medical appointments, therapy appointments, other appointments that need to get done, and tasks and responsibilities to keep up with the household. So you can learn more about my online program at caregivingwithoutregret.com. There's the Thrival Kit is there, or just go to caregivingthrivalkit.com. Makes a great gift for yourself as a caregiver, potentially for the holidays, or for another caregiver that you know. The program will continue to evolve over time. I have monthly group coaching sessions, and there is also a private Facebook group for members to ask questions and get support at any time. And then finally, I touched on this earlier, I do an ongoing caregiving power hour. Like Kim has these dialogues discussions. I have the caregiving power hour, and the next one is actually coming up on November 18th at noon Eastern time. And you could sign up for a free spot at caregivingpowerhour.com. Perhaps we can put that in the chat as well. And we're having a discussion. And like I said, I have an elder law attorney coming next week, Nicole. So she'd be a great person to ask some of the questions we talked about tonight about powers of attorney, healthcare proxies, etc. And we're going to dive a bit deeply into how to set up a plan, how to do smart planning. Because that's what she's all about. In fact, she's the founder and CEO of smartplanning101.com. So I'm excited to host her. And this has been great, Kim. I just really loved every moment. And I encourage folks that are here, because you're such great people, please feel free to reach out. You could connect with me if you just send an email to support@caregivingwithoutregret.com. support@caregivingwithoutregret.com. We can take care of you, and certainly willing to help with resources. So please feel free to reach out for what you need. Do not continue on the caregiving journey alone. Find a champion, whether that champion be a coach like me, a therapist, a counselor, a minister, a priest, rabbi, good friend, whoever that is. It's important, I think, to get through the journey of care well if you have a champion in your corner that will help you, support you, and hold you accountable to taking steps to take care of yourself along the way. So thank you so much, Kim.
Great. Well, thank you, Michael. And I just wanted to say that thank you for the wonderful comments in the chat. Uma says thank you to Kim and Michael for an amazingly useful session. Great. We're happy that, as I said, Michael was going to provide some valuable tips and strategies, and I think he has delivered on what we had said we would. She'll be sure to pass on resources to those looking for them. Great. Maya says thank you for the resources and the valuable thoughts. Jane says, excellent, Kim and Michael, grateful beyond words. Thank you. Michael, you have a very kind face, says Jacqueline. She's a visual learner. Thank you so much. And thank you to Kim. Maya says she'll share the resources back in India. Great, Maya. Thank you so much. And Chris Merlo, thank you for joining us. Uma, loved being with you on the same webinar. Oh, she was on with her sister. So great. They just keep coming in. So thank you, everyone. This has been great. Hopefully from the comments, we see that you've got some valuable resources, and absolutely check out Michael's website, because he has plenty of resources. And any questions or any further connections, reach out to him at support@caregivingwithoutregret.com. And also just a quick plug, Michael is the reason that I'm doing these webinars. Michael has created a program with co-founder John Schumacher on Hangouts That Convert. And so I have to give credit for the fact that I'm doing these webinars, and this is the 11th webinar. Thanks to Michael and his walking me through the steps and taking a program with him that he really just researched and just created with his business partner. And so, if anyone's interested in that as well, to get more information, go to hangoutsthatconvert.com, and John and Michael can definitely walk you through this. But I have to give credit where credit is due, and it's because of Michael that he had some accountability for me and said, Kim, get started with these webinars, and we jumped it almost a year ago. So thank you for that. So again, just a big thank you for all of you to be here tonight. And as a reminder, you'll be getting an email that December the 10th, I'll be doing the Advanced Care Planning free webinar as well, just in time for the holidays. And as Michael said, to start off the new year with a plan, at least let's begin the conversation. So just be looking for that. And for all of you here in the United States that'll be celebrating Thanksgiving, wish you a very happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays. And again, just a big thank you, Michael, for all that you shared tonight. And you just bring such heart. And so that's why I just love being a colleague and love working with you and love having you as a friend. So thank you again so much.
Well, ditto to you, Kim. I mean, I adore every moment I have to collaborate with you. So it's so important. And I'm so glad that a bit over a year ago, when I first approached you about getting on camera and sharing your wonderful knowledge and spirit and way, that you took the challenge, and that you dug in, you took the mentoring, and you took action, right? Yeah. So, and that's really a big thing. And a lot of caregivers are out there, people that are here. You may have knowledge and expertise that needs to be heard from other people. I know we had a nice community of folks that are here tonight. So, and that's why I wanted to partner and start Hangouts That Convert, because I think the Google Hangouts platform provides us with one of the best resources that's out there to provide presentations like this that can literally just bring us into your living room and let us actually do these presentations right from our own living room. So, right. So we can do this. And that's why I think it's so great. So thank you all, everybody that was here this evening with us, really made this session so much more engaged, rich. And I'm so glad you got something. I got as much out of this as you did. So absolutely. Again, Kim, thank you so much for the invite.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Okay. And with that, we will sign off for tonight. And I look forward to seeing you on December the 10th, if that's of interest to you. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great night. Bye-bye now.